Somewhere deep inside you, beneath all the polished smiles and hard-won successes, there's a part of you that's still waiting to be seen. You might not even know it's there, but it's calling to you now. It's the child who stayed quiet when the world got loud. The one who learned to color inside the lines so they wouldn't be punished. The one who made itself small so that others could feel big. This child isn't just a memory, it's you, and it's still here. Carl Jung once wrote, "The most terrifying thing is to accept oneself completely. But what's even more terrifying is what we become when we don't. When you abandon that inner child in the name of perfection, you don't just lose your softness or your vulnerability, you lose your wholeness. And in that loss, perfectionism takes root." This is not another lecture on how you're too hard on yourself. This is not another checklist of affirmations to boost your self-esteem. This is a call to look at the parts of yourself you've been running from. To confront the stories you tell yourself in the silence of the night. To finally see that perfectionism isn't a strength or a virtue, it's a wound. And that wound is ready to heal. Let's begin by stepping into the first truth. Perfectionism is not about being perfect. It's about being safe. You don't have to remember the exact moment, but it remembers you. The subtle shift when your soul began folding in on itself. When you first felt the need to be smaller, quieter, easier. Before you had words for it. Before you could name the ache. There was a message you absorbed. Who I am is not enough. And so, you started changing. Not because you were bad, not because you wanted to, but because it was the only way to feel safe. Carl Jung once wrote, "Every form of addiction is bad, no matter whether the narcotic be alcohol, morphine, or idealism." Perfectionism is an addiction, though it's more subtle, more insidious. It doesn't intoxicate you in the way substances might, but it clouds your sense of self just as deeply. Its narcotic is approval, its high is validation, and its withdrawal is shame. Like all addictions, it was born in pain. The wound began when the world told you, "Be good," but left you to figure out what good meant on your own. Maybe it was a parent's sharp glance when you cried too loudly. Maybe it was the way your teachers only praised you when you got it exactly right. Maybe it was watching the adults around you shrink under their own heavy burdens, making you believe that to love someone meant taking on their pain. Whatever it was, the message was clear. You must perform, and perform perfectly. But here's the paradox Jung warned us about. Wholeness is not achieved by cutting off a portion of one's being, but by integration of the contraries. In other words, the more you suppress your imperfections, the more fragmented you become. Perfectionism is the great splitter of the soul. It divides you into the acceptable and the unacceptable, and it traps you in an endless cycle of proving your worth through what you do, rather than embracing who you are. So here you are. You're not a child anymore, yet the wound remains. And that wound has a voice. It whispers, "If I'm not perfect, I won't be loved." That voice doesn't speak from the mind. It speaks from the body, from the nervous system, from the echoing chambers of early memory. It's why you feel a tightening in your chest when you make a mistake, why your stomach sinks when someone critiques you, why you keep chasing achievements that never quite fill the emptiness. It's not your fault. It never was. That wound didn't form because you were weak. It formed because you were strong enough to survive. But survival is no longer enough. You've outgrown the need to be perfect. What you need now is to be whole. And to be whole, you must go back. Not to relive the pain, but to reclaim what you lost. You must return to the moment when the wound was born, and say to that small, scared part of yourself, "You don't have to be perfect for me. I see you. I hear you. I'm here now." This is where the real work begins. Not in striving to be better, but in daring to be real. Before you ever learned the language of perfectionism, you understood its rules. Without anyone spelling them out, you knew how to fit in, how to stay safe, how to avoid the discomfort of rejection. You didn't have words for it, but you felt it in the sharp looks, the subtle sighs, the moments of silence that carried more weight than words ever could. You learned that being yourself wasn't enough, so you started being good. Carl Jung once wrote, "The greatest burden a child must bear is the unlived life of the parent." Often, the pressure to be perfect isn't even ours, it's inherited. Parents who struggled with their own unfulfilled dreams, their own fears, their own wounds, unconsciously handed them down. They didn't mean to. It wasn't malicious. But you, as a child, absorbed their tension, their anxiety, their longing for something better. And you made it your mission to be the good one, the one who wouldn't disappoint. Being good meant being quiet when you wanted to scream. It meant excelling in school, even if it drained you. It meant cleaning your room without being asked, smiling through your tears, hiding your anger, and never letting your needs become a burden. You weren't just trying to earn love, you were trying to avoid loss. You believed that if you could just be good enough, you could keep people close, you could keep the world safe. But here's the cost of being good. You end up abandoning yourself. The anger you felt but never expressed turned inward, becoming self-criticism. The joy you suppressed to keep others comfortable became numbness. The boundaries you never set became walls you couldn't break down. And the child who needed to be good grew into an adult who couldn't stop performing. Jung reminds us, neurosis is always a substitute for legitimate suffering. The perfectionist's neurosis, this constant need to be good, to do more, to be more, isn't real freedom. It's a way of avoiding the deeper pain of feeling rejected, unseen, unloved. But that deeper pain doesn't go away just because you ignore it. It sits in the corners of your soul, waiting for the day you're brave enough to turn around and face it. And that day is now. To break free from the need to be good, you must start by asking, who taught me that my worth depends on my performance? Whose voice echoes in my head when I feel I'm not enough? Whose approval have I been chasing all these years? Once you recognize where the pattern began, you can begin to unravel it. You can look at that child who tried so hard to be good and say, you don't have to try anymore. I love you as you are. This is not a quick fix. It's a process of unlearning, of peeling back the layers of approval seeking, of learning to sit with the discomfort of imperfection. But every time you let yourself fail without shame, every time you rest without guilt, every time you speak your truth without fear, you break the cycle. You remind that inner child that they don't have to be good to be worthy. They just have to be real. It's hard to pinpoint the moment you first turned against yourself. It wasn't sudden. It was subtle. The betrayal wasn't loud. It was quiet. But it's there, woven into the fabric of who you've become. Every time you forced a smile when you wanted to cry. Every time you said yes when you meant no. Every time you swallowed your anger because it felt safer that way. These small betrayals, repeated over years, created the perfectionist you see today. Carl Jung once said, "Until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life and you will call it fate." And so you lived, not knowing that each seemingly minor choice to please others was building a pattern, not knowing that each time you put your own needs last, you were reinforcing a belief that you didn't matter, not knowing that by silencing your inner truth, you were cutting yourself off from the very thing you craved most, connection. But here's the painful truth. You learned to betray yourself because it worked. It kept you safe. It kept the peace. It made you likable. You were the dependable one, the overachiever, the friend who never asked for anything in return. And in a world that values productivity over authenticity, you were rewarded for that betrayal. People admired you. They praised you. They depended on you. They never saw the cost, and neither did you. Jung tells us, the most terrifying thing is to accept oneself completely. It's terrifying because it means facing all the ways you've abandoned yourself. It means seeing the anger you never expressed, the dreams you never followed, the boundaries you never set. It means realizing that the person you present to the world is not the person you really are. And it means having the courage to stop betraying yourself, even when it feels like the safest option. This is the hardest part of the journey, recognizing that no amount of external validation will ever heal the wounds of self-betrayal. No achievement, no compliment, no promotion will fill the void left by years of ignoring your own needs. The only thing that can heal that void is you. You, turning inward. You, listening to the parts of yourself that you've silenced for so long. You, choosing to honor your truth, even when it's messy and inconvenient. Because every time you said yes when you wanted to say no, you weren't just betraying yourself. You were teaching yourself that your voice didn't matter. Every time you stayed quiet to avoid conflict, you were teaching yourself that your feelings weren't important. Every time you pushed yourself to be perfect, you were teaching yourself that who you are wasn't enough. But you are enough. You always were. The first step to healing this pattern is awareness. Notice when you're about to say yes out of fear. Notice when you're tempted to smile through your pain. Notice when you're reaching for another goal just to prove your worth. And in those moments, pause. Breathe. Remind yourself, I don't have to be perfect. I just have to be real. With each pause, each moment of awareness, you begin to undo the pattern. You begin to trust yourself again. You begin to remember that your needs, your boundaries, your truth, they matter. And as you start to honor them, you'll find that the world doesn't fall apart. People may even respect you more. And if they don't, you'll learn that you don't need their approval to be whole. Healing isn't about becoming someone new. It's about returning to who you've always been. It's about meeting yourself with compassion instead of criticism, love instead of judgment, truth instead of perfection. And as you do, you'll realize that the only person you ever needed to please was you. In the quiet moments of your life, when the distractions fade and the noise falls away, you can feel them. The child you were, still here, still waiting. Not a distant memory or a fleeting image, but a living presence deep within you. They've never left. And for all these years, they've been whispering, hoping you'd finally turn around and see them again. Carl Jung said, in every adult, there lurks a child, an eternal child, something that is always becoming, is never completed, and calls for unceasing care, attention, and education. This child is not a metaphor. They are the part of you that never stopped needing what you didn't receive. Love, safety, presence, acceptance. The child you left behind to survive the world as it was. Returning to them is not about digging up old wounds to wallow in. It's about reclaiming what was abandoned. It's about acknowledging that the very parts of you that were pushed down, hidden, or denied are still there, longing to be held. You don't have to know exactly when it started. You don't have to remember every detail. All you need is the willingness to turn inward and listen. You might hear the voice of a child who feels unseen, who wonders, what did I do wrong? You might feel the pain of a child who learned to smile when they wanted to cry. You might sense the longing of a child who needed love but was told they had to earn it. And as you listen, you'll realize they're not asking you to fix them. They're asking you to sit with them, to be with them, to stop running away. When you stop and let them speak, something begins to shift. The wound, which once felt so vast and unmovable, begins to soften. The stories you've told yourself about your worth, your value, your identity, stories that began with that child, start to lose their power. Because as you return to them, as you meet them with compassion instead of judgment, they begin to trust you. They begin to heal. Jung reminds us, the acceptance of oneself is the essence of the whole moral problem and the epitome of a whole outlook on life. And the first step in that acceptance is meeting the child who still lives within you. Seeing them, not as a flaw to be corrected, but as a source of wisdom and resilience. Listening to them, not to fix them, but to understand them, and holding them, not to change who they are, but to show them they're safe now. They're safe with you. The journey back to your inner child is not linear. It's not a one-time event. It's a practice of returning again and again, each time with a little more tenderness, a little more patience. It's speaking to them when you're anxious, reassuring them when you're scared, celebrating them when you feel joy. It's learning to hold space for their emotions, anger, sadness, excitement, fear, without judgment. As you do this, you'll notice something profound. The perfectionism that once felt so deeply ingrained begins to loosen its grip. The voice of the inner critic grows quieter. The need to prove yourself diminishes because you're no longer seeking approval from the world outside. You're giving it to yourself, within. When you meet that child with love, when you return to them and let them know they don't have to be perfect to be loved, you start to rewrite your story. You stop chasing an ideal that never existed and start embracing the truth of who you are. Imperfect, human, and beautifully whole. Healing is not a destination. It's not something you achieve, finish, or check off a list. It's a practice, a gentle, ongoing process of meeting yourself exactly where you are. It's waking up each day and choosing not to abandon yourself. It's listening to the quiet voice of the child inside you, over and over, until they begin to trust that you won't leave again. Carl Jung wrote, "We cannot change anything until we accept it. Condemnation does not liberate, it oppresses." You cannot heal your perfectionism by hating it. You cannot beat it into submission or force it to go away. Healing begins when you understand that your perfectionism isn't a character flaw. It's a response, a survival strategy, a learned behavior that once kept you safe. But now, you are no longer that child. You no longer need to earn love by being perfect. You no longer need to prove your worth by overachieving. You no longer need to suppress your feelings to make others comfortable. Now, you have the power to choose differently, to meet yourself with compassion instead of criticism, to embrace your imperfections as part of what makes you whole. Jung said, "Wholeness is not achieved by cutting off a portion of one's being, but by integration of the contraries." Healing perfectionism doesn't mean eliminating it entirely. It means integrating it. It means seeing the part of you that strives, that works hard, that cares deeply, and understanding where it came from. It means holding that part gently, without judgment, and letting it know that it's no longer in charge. You are. First, start by noticing when your perfectionism shows up. Pay attention to the times when you feel the urge to overdo, overgive, or overachieve. Notice when you feel tense, anxious, or drained. Just notice, without judgment. Awareness is the first step. Second, when you catch yourself in a perfectionist moment, pause. Take a breath. Place a hand on your heart or your stomach. wherever you feel that tightness, and ask yourself, what am I afraid of right now? What would happen if I didn't do this perfectly? These questions gently invite your deeper fears to surface, so you can meet them with compassion instead of resistance. Third, remind yourself that it's safe to be imperfect. You might say to yourself, it's okay to make mistakes. I'm still worthy. I'm still loved. Over time, these small affirmations begin to shift the narrative. They replace the inner critic's voice with one that is kinder, softer, and more aligned with your true self. Fourth, practice setting boundaries with your time and energy. Perfectionism often leads to burnout because it convinces you to take on too much. Begin saying no to things that don't serve your well-being. Start small, with 1 or 2 commitments, and build from there. Each boundary you set is a step toward reclaiming your peace. Fifth, reconnect with the things that bring you joy, even if you're not good at them. Pick up an old hobby, try something new, or simply spend time in nature. These activities remind you that you are not defined by your productivity or your achievements. You are allowed to play, to rest, to be. As you integrate these steps, you'll begin to feel a shift. The tight grip of perfectionism will start to loosen. The heavy burden of always being good will begin to lift. And in its place, you'll find a sense of lightness, a return to yourself. Jung said, the privilege of a lifetime is to become who you truly are. And that's what healing the roots of your perfectionism is all about. It's not about becoming a better version of yourself. It's about becoming the real version of yourself, the one who existed before the world told you that you needed to be perfect to be loved. So now, take a deep breath. Release the pressure. Give yourself permission to be human. And know that your worth was never in question. If this journey touched something inside you, if you felt seen, if you felt a spark of hope, if you recognized a part of yourself in these words, don't keep it to yourself. Share your thoughts in the comments below. Let us know what resonated most, what you're working through, or even what you're still unsure about. Your voice matters here. And if you want more content that dives deep into the soul, exploring the hidden corners of the self, offering not just advice but a mirror to your inner truth, then please like this video, subscribe to the channel, and ring the bell. That way, you'll be the first to know when the next piece of this story, your story, is released. Every video, every insight, every shared word is a step on this journey back to yourself. You are not alone. No matter how overwhelming it feels, no matter how long you've been carrying the weight of perfectionism, there is a path forward. And together, we can walk it.